We have a very special guest with us, and I think I have the title correct. He is the Chief Customer Officer with the Tennessee Department of Tourist Development. I think that's correct. Dennis can correct me if I'm wrong when he comes on the screen here. But everybody in Vol Nation knows him, even if they don't realize they do. And that's what's fascinating. So, Dennis, welcome. We're so glad to have you. Did I get the title correct?
You nailed it, Evan. You did good.
That's what I'm talking about. Dennis is actually great friends. Being in the Department of Tourism, he's great friends with Bill Dance, and we've had the privilege of having Bill on our show as well. And so we'll try to link. I'll try to remember to link that show in the description as well. But Dennis, we are so excited you're with us, and like I mentioned, every person watching the show right now knows who you are, even if they don't realize they know who you are, and that is because Dennis will forever live in Vol lore as this guy right here on top of the goalpost in this iconic photo after the 1998 Florida game. And what's so cool is he's wearing the exact jersey that he's wearing in the photo on the show tonight. So the reason we're so excited to have Dennis with us, and I'm going to come back to this photo here in a minute, but this is perfect timing. Because here we are, we're sandwiched right between the Florida game and the Alabama game. And Dennis was at both the Florida 98 game when the crowd rushed the field. Obviously, he was part of it right there. And the 22 Alabama game when the crowd rushed the field. So, Dennis, I know it's not going to be easy, but can you try to compare those two atmospheres and what it was like in the stadium celebrating?
Man, it was, 98. It was kind of wild. We had front row seats. Angela and I had bought season tickets, and we picked up last minute deals from the ticket office. And for some reason they put us on the front row, right behind the goalpost in that south end zone. And so yeah, we were literally right front row, pushing the concrete wall, right there in section M. So the perspective for that game in '98, we were down low. And for the Alabama game, I had done some trading around, and I put the girls. I wound up putting the family down low, and I was actually sitting in the upper deck during the Alabama game of 22. And so I had a different fan or stadium experience. But man, I don't know. I think the crowd went to the Alabama game of 22, with an expectation that they thought something special could happen. And I think Florida was one of those deals in '98. You always hope that something could happen, but we'd been destroyed for so long by Steve Spurrier and the Florida Gators of that decade. And I don't know that we expected to win that game. I think it was I felt like when he missed that field goal, it was like the curse is broken.
Absolutely. No sirree. The great call by John Warren.
Pandemonium reigns. So
absolutely.
It was different experiences. I think the crowd did have an expectation that it could happen in 22.
So Dennis, when you look at this picture, two questions. Number one, do you remember anything about that night? Number two, if so, what was going through your head when you got on the field? Like was your first instinct, I'm climbing up on the goalpost, or like what was going through your mind during all this?
So I told you we were on the front row, row 1, section M, right behind this goalpost, and when we lined up, when we were lining up for the kick, when Cooper Collins was lining up for this kick, of course everybody was standing up and beating the walls, and the electricity was in the air trying to disturb the kick. And all the folks behind us were yelling, if he misses this kick, if you all don't go forward, we're running over you. So for about 60 seconds prior to the kick, we all had marching orders from the folks behind us that they were coming without us. And Angela, my wife Angela, you guys know Angela, was sitting beside of me, and we had made a plan and said, we're going to get separated in this deal. You think in '98 we didn't have cell phones back then. You didn't. How are you going to find that person? And we said we're going to get separated. We had already made a plan of where to meet outside the stadium after if it all went down. But so I knew that I had to go when the if the kick was bad. So as soon as we saw the signal, when we saw the refs doing this, it was like, oh my stars, this is going down. And I jumped. The CBS camera, what was funny was the CBS camera, there's one, I've looked at a million different views of the different archive footage of, a lot of people send me clips from here and there, but there was one view of the CBS camera that followed the kick through the end zone, and it kind of zoomed in on the crowd as the wave started over. And one of the cameras kind of, for whatever reason, they picked up and kind of zoomed in on me as one of the first people across the wall. And I've got this on tape, and I really, I tell this a lot of times in crowds in my day job now. But when I came across the wall, if you remember those state troopers that all like to line that back of that end zone, they were state troopers shoulder to shoulder right there. And as soon as I came across the wall, the camera picked up on this, but a state trooper stepped right at me and had his arms out. And I did the best spin move I've ever done in my life on that state trooper. And I've got CBS footage to prove it. And, so I tell a lot of my friends today that are state troopers, I'm like, there was a time where I did put a spin move and I've got it on video to prove it. But I wasn't going straight for the goalpost. I ran straight toward straight out through the end zone. And Angela was sitting in our seats back then and had a little camera. She was taking pictures. She has a picture. I'm in the end zone. The Florida players have not even got up off of the pile yet. They're still laying on the ground, and we've done made our way across the end zone. And I look up and I see a security guard. So I see a security guard running from kind of the sideline running toward me. And you're thinking, oh man, here it goes. You're about to you're going to get taken out. And about time he gets 3 or 4 yards from me, the security guard puts up his hands and we high five in the end zone. So yeah, I was expecting, to have to try another spin move or what I was going to have to do. So, and this is all on video
awesome.
too. So I'm not exaggerating. We can go back to replay if we need to, but so we I high-fived the security guard. And by the time that had happened, when I turned around, I'm standing on the goal line. I'm already through the checkerboards and I'm on the goal line. I turned around and looked back, and by this time, the wave that was coming already had the goal. They were already on the goalpost, and the goalpost was breaking, or they were working on the goalpost. And by the time I got around back down, the goalpost, if you'll remember looking back, the goalpost actually spun. It did like a pivot. It did this right here. And so that one arm was laying down by the ground and everyone was rocking it back and forth here. And that thing could have hurt somebody when it fell. Actually, when it popped and snapped, it came crashing to the ground. And I just was standing when it crashed, it all went up on everybody's shoulders and started moving across the field. And where I was standing, when that thing started walking away, I looked up and that goalpost, that stub was right over my head when that goalpost started marching away. And I said, I'm going up that. I'm going to get up for whatever. I'm going up that goalpost. And I think someone was standing close. I think the first step I had to get a push with a foot. But once I kind of got started, you'll see the glove on my right hand. Everyone asked me if that was a Michael Jackson glove or what I had going on. That was actually a glove that Leonard Little had given me sitting on that front row. A lot of times the players would come around at the end of the game and throw out their gloves. So I don't know at what point in time, but I remember that glove, he came around and that became a part of game day attire. And so they say, did that glove help you grip that pole? And I might as well. Yes, I'm sure it did. But just wound up on top and got right up there. And man, it was just a sea of orange. I mean, you've seen the photos and I remember looking down. We had no cell phones back then. Everybody didn't have a camera in their pocket in '98. I mean, no one had a camera. And I remember this looking down, and there was this photographer, it was one of the event photographers. And he went around like a half circle. I remember him. He was out about 10 yards, and he just walked around about a half moon circle, and he was taking all these shots. Had no idea that what he was capturing. But he wound up being a photographer with the Associated Press, the AP. And so this photo the next day hit the AP wire. That's how back then is they distributed everything through the AP wire. So I tell my kids that, that's our version of going viral. If the AP wire picked you up and your photo went across the AP wire, the next day I had friends on the West Coast. This photo got picked up in Seattle. It was the front page of the sports section in Seattle. It was in a couple of California papers on the front page. And so I wound up having friends calling. Back then you had to call the landline. But I had messages from folks going, "Don't tell me this is you." And and of course ESPN featured it, over and over and over and over. And that became, it became a symbol of that Tennessee-Florida rivalry. And
Absolutely.
we know that we were going to have a bad program for 20 years. And I tell my kids that picture kind of became the symbol of hope through those 20 years of the downturn. Every time there was a big rivalry game, this photo would pop back up, and you hear the term all the time. It feels like '98. It feels like '98. 98 was just that special year, and but had no idea that this photo was going to become the symbol of hope for over 20 years.
I mean, it's perfect framing. It's the Vols letters behind you there and everything. It's perfect.
The Associated Press, the guy, he knew what he was doing.
So do you know the guy on the front of it there? He's hanging on to your jersey, trying to stay up there. Do you know that guy?
It's funny. So I do. I met that guy one time. I don't know who he is now. We met one time. But he almost pulled me off. You can see his right hand has this jersey clenched.
Oh yeah.
And he was struggling to stay on, and he was there he probably wasn't there a minute. And I wound up putting my foot on his chest, and I wound up like it's both of us are going down, or you got to go down. And I wound up pulling that Nike tennis shoe up and putting right on his chest, and I had to take him off. But I was probably up there. Again, I've seen the footage, so it was probably 5 minutes.
Wow.
Back in '98, they were cutting sod. They destroyed that field cutting the sod up. If you all remember that.
Yep.
There's one video clip. Someone threw me a square section of sod that was about a 12-inch by 12-inch square section of sod. And I'm on the pole and I'm going, what am I going to do with this sod? Well, I wound up just setting the sod on my head. So there was a period I was up there with a section of sod on my head, and then someone threw me a flag. So there's a period of time where I'm up there and I just have a flag and I'm waving this big orange flag but no, it was probably a 5-minute period. But I want to tell you this part of the story of I tell people I probably would still be on the goalpost if it wasn't for this next piece of information. So you see my shoes dangling down right there. This involves my wife, Evan, and you guys know my wife, Angela. So during all of this, where we got separated in the crowd, I guess she looked up, saw me or whatever. She migrated back over, and she was actually standing right under me when all this was going on. So she was right there. You can't see her in the picture, but she's standing there. Well, there were Florida people on the field, and it was some equipment managers that were cleaning up the bench, the Florida bench. If you remember, that was the Florida end zone where they had to go out to their bus and their equipment. Well, one of the Florida equipment managers walked by during all this ceremony, and he decided that he wanted that left shoe right there, that Nike shoe that was hanging down off the pole. He decided that he wanted to take that with him. And my foot was down, and he had his Florida gear on, and he reached up and grabbed that shoe. Well, Miss Angela was standing there, and he didn't realize that Miss Angela was with me. And this guy grabbed my shoe, and I remember he looked up at me and he kind of waved like, I'm going out of this tunnel. I'm taking your shoe with me. Well, this is when your amazing wife, Miss Angela, steps in, and she reaches over to grab to stop this shoe theft. We're going to call them low down gators, doggone shoe thieves. And she reaches over to grab him, and when she grabs his shirt, she grabs it by the collar, and he had a gold chain on. And of course, there's 700 state troopers down there. And as soon as she reaches to grab, they are swarmed by Tennessee state troopers. And I jump off the pole at this point because my wife is fighting to get my shoe back. And by the time when I get over there, the state trooper, he said, "What's going on?" Basically, he said, "What's going on?" And she said, "He's got my husband's shoe." And he said, "Well, she's got my gold chain." So Angela, when she got a hold of his shirt, his gold chain broke. So she was holding the guy's gold chain. He had my shoe. There was this exchange of gold chain for shoe. And that Florida guy smarted off to the state troopers. They wound up putting handcuffs on the guy and walked him. The last time we saw him, they were walking him out of the tunnel with handcuffs. So that's the end of that guy. And I tell everybody, if it wasn't for my shoe and Miss Angela defending me, I probably would still be on that goalpost.
Well, now this jersey, which I think it's awesome that you're wearing the actual jersey in the photo right now, but so my understanding is it made a reappearance in the 22 Alabama game.
This jersey, we believe, at that time, we thought it might have some of that Tennessee magic dust left on it or something. So we broke it out in 22 and wore it to the Alabama game. I mentioned that I think people went with an air of expectation. Well, I broke this thing out and it's not been worn. It doesn't get worn a lot, and it's kind of put up and protected. I don't want it to fall apart. And I hope to give it to my grandkids one day, should the Lord bless me with some grandkids. But, this jersey was on at the Alabama game. We broke it of 22. So you can see that's my daughter, Sadie, my youngest daughter, Sadie, is on my shoulders, and we were going to recreate the photo. She has this jersey on at the 2022 Alabama game. And we were going over to recreate the photo and kind of have a ceremonial passing of the torch. I had carried the burden for 24 years or so, and was ready to put that on to the next generation. And we got over there, and there were two police officers stationed at the bottom of that post, and would not let us, did not want us to climb the pole. And I would not be a good example if I would have disobeyed the police officers' commands and put her up there anyway. But that's as close as we could get. Sadie's got the jersey on, and she's touching the goal post. This one will be on Saturday. I'm glad Danny White made it an orange out, and I do not have to go buy orange. So here's a funny story about the 22 Alabama. The people around me where we were sitting knew that this jersey was the jersey from 98. And there were probably 10 or 15 people around me before the kick of the Alabama game that we won. They were all reaching down and rubbing this jersey and touching the jersey. Like the whole section up here, as far as it could reach, they were like, touch the jersey. And so they were reaching down and everybody was rubbing the jersey. So anyway, this one will be on Saturday.
That's what I'm talking about. And so your daughter, Sadie, there, I was fortunate and privileged. I got to teach. My wife and I both have gotten to teach Dennis's daughters. I got to teach two of them. My wife got to teach all three of them. And one of the funniest memories I have of Sadie being in middle school was she came in a shirt one day that had this photo on the shirt. That was awesome. That was fantastic.
That was probably one they had me made. I think they made some for there's been a couple of versions. What's crazy is they've been sold in Knoxville. So there's, how they do those special game day shirts periodically.
You get NIL deals out of that?
I did not. No, that AP photographer, I've got to reach out with him and get that released. But they did a version that said Pandemonium Reigns on a T-shirt, and I think that's one awesome. City wore to shirt day to school. But no, it's been fun over the years.
What's fascinating?
I went into the UT Sports Hall of Fame one day for my job. I had some customers that we were down there kicking around UT, and we went into the Sports Hall of Fame, and I didn't know this photo was going to be over there. We were looking at the deal, and I looked up and stopped, and at that point in time, I told the group I was with, I said I had no idea that I was in the UT Sports Hall of Fame. And they said, do what? And I said, look up on the wall right there. And they had that photo. I don't think it's still there. They've rechanged some decorations and so forth since that time. But there was a period this was on display in the UT Sports Hall of Fame.
That's awesome. Well, what's fascinating is if you just Google Tennessee versus Florida 1998 and click on images, this image shows up from the Knoxville News Sentinel right here. It's amazing.
About 17 times. Yeah, it's funny how that has lived and been a great piece of fun for our family for sure.